I'll tell you this, folks. If you help Mark get elected to governor, if you help us send Mark to Albany, he's going to end the pay-to-play corruption that's making your taxes go up. He's going to balance the state budget, and he's going to help all of us in New York State believe again. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend, Dutchess County Executive, and the next governor of the state of New York, Marcus Molinaro.
Thanks, everybody. That was very kind of you. I appreciate that, Ken. Where did Ken go? Thank you. I think very highly of you. You do a great job here in Ulster. Mr. Chairman, thank you for a busy day. I appreciate it. I don't mind, by the way, starting very early and ending very late in Ulster County because it is only a 15-minute drive home. Ken, or the chairman, said I want to get home and see my kids. Yeah, they've aged about 7 years in the 6, 8, 10 weeks I've been traveling the state. My son, my youngest son, Eli, is 20, see now I'm losing it, 21 months old. He has learned how to use FaceTime. So he calls me on my wife's iPhone, and it wouldn't matter if I was in Buffalo or the basement. He just sees me on the other end of a computer screen, and he's okay. The other two, I have to explain why their dad's out on the road as much as I am. I am thrilled to be here. I'm grateful to all of you to spend some time this evening. You met, obviously, and know somebody who I have the utmost respect for and I admire greatly. My wife, on the other hand, doesn't like Chris Gibson, and I'll explain why. Because Chris Gibson is the reason I'm running for governor. He didn't. And every day my wife says, "That son of a..." No, she doesn't. We love Chris, his family. We like Mary Jo better. I'm thrilled to have Chris. You might know Chris is actually chairing my campaign. If you're going to go off to battle, you need a colonel, and we've got one. So I'm very, very appreciative to Chris. Thank you. So this is a little bit unusual for people running for statewide office, but it's something that I've done every day of my life as a public official. And it's something I promise you we're going to do more of when I am governor of the state of New York. And that is to get out from behind the podium, and I actually often do that, not just for today, get out from behind the podium and spend some time actually talking to the people we serve. So I thought if you don't mind, I'll give you a little bit of my background. I think you know most of it, your friends and neighbors to a degree. And then to talk a little bit about why I decided to run, and then it's your show. I'll tell you, we have a few simple rules. I'll get to those in a minute. But I really value this. In 1994, yes, Ken, I was elected to the Village Board of Trustees in a 4-way race for 2 seats as an 18-year-old. My mom and I were the only 2 people in Tivoli who thought I was going to lose. An Italian mother, that's the way they are. My mother and I were pretty positive I wasn't going to pull off a victory, but nevertheless I won with the most votes. Served 1 year as village trustee in Tivoli, right across the river, as you know. And in 1995, the mayor, who had served for 20 years, Ed Neese, so I had the greatest respect for, decided to retire. He asked us village board members, he said, "Any of you want to run for mayor?" And so, of course, I ran home and asked my mom if it would be okay. And in 1995, as a 19-year-old, I was elected mayor of Tivoli. It was an honor, and it's not something I ever forgot. Why? A few reasons. One, at that level of government, you learn the value of public service. You can't really hide from 1,300 people. So if you tell one person one thing, you better tell the other 1,299 the same thing, because they figure it out pretty quickly. You also know that the decisions you make have real impacts immediately. That at the local government level, when you decide or you act in some way, it impacts somebody's life. And you need to appreciate that. And then lastly, at the local level, not only can't you hide, but you're obligated, right? So if somebody has a problem, they generally, that they want to deal with government, they turn to your local, maybe your mayor, your trustee, your council member, and you don't know which layer of government. I mean, New York, my gosh, we have so many layers. How could you possibly know? And so as a local village mayor, I learned early on that I had two choices. If somebody stopped me on the street to ask me about a pothole or a driver's license or a passport, or maybe mom lost her birth certificate, or maybe you had some question about some federal policy, I could do one of two things. I could say, don't call me, call your congressman, let him figure it out. Call your state assemblyman, they'll deal with it. Or I could say, it's not my level of government, but let's figure out a way to get you the answer that you need. I think you can appreciate which tack I took. Because in my community, I cared deeply about the people that I served, and we wanted to make sure government worked for them. I spent 12 years as a village mayor where every day we worked to try to bring residents together. By the way, in Tivoli, New York, you run without party affiliation, so I appreciated what Chris had to say. You learn early on that when the roof leaks, it leaks on Republicans and Democrats, and our job is simply to fix the roof. We see too many people in Washington and too many people in Albany who want to blame somebody for the leak instead of spending time trying to fix it. And you learn that instantly at my level, at village government level. So I served 12 years as a village mayor. I think you know that. Many of you probably do. In 2006, I was elected to serve in the New York State Assembly, where most good ideas go to die. Actually, I wish a few more would go there to die. But I enjoyed that work. You know, some people, in fact, there's a few folks in this room who have written about me for a number of years, would say when you serve in the State Assembly, and I was in the minority, gosh, that must have been frustrating. And my answer is no, not at all. Because you hone new skills. You have to learn new responsibilities. When you're in a minority in a state body, you learn that you're not going to get your way. So you've got to work across party lines, and sometimes you got to check your ego at the door. Let someone else take credit for your idea. Let someone else push your policy. Let someone else be the one who gets to stand and cut the ribbon. And that's okay. It'd be nice, in fact, if maybe the governor understood that. Humility in public service is a good thing. And I learned that in the State Assembly. I left in 2012 when I was elected to Dutchess County 7th Executive. Yes, Ken didn't mention this, but I was also the youngest county executive in county history. So I have a very long history of being young. I came into office in 2012. Chris kind of alluded to it. 2012 was in the last throes of the Great Recession. County government, our county government, was dealing with some of the same issues that many municipalities dealt with across the state of New York. We had seen a bond rating downgrade. That's our credit rating, right? We've gone down. So a reduction in our assessed valuation. We were dealing with significant issues. I inherited a $40 million budget gap, and I immediately began to think maybe I should go back to the State Assembly. And we really only had one of two choices, right? Which is, one, we could have shirked and just said, hey, listen, we'll figure it out, or we got to work. We chose to get to work. We consolidated county government. We shrunk the county's workforce, smallest workforce in 35 years. Yes, I tell people all the time we were able to accomplish that through an early retirement incentive. Worked out very well. We were able, as I said, to consolidate government. We modernized some of what we do to make it more efficient and effective. And yes, we had to make some difficult choices. I learned from my mistakes. I admitted mistakes. What a novel concept in office. It's nice from time to time to actually be honest with the people you serve. I actually believe that. I think it should happen a lot more often. And over the course of the 7 years I've been county executive, we turned that $40 million budget gap into a $20 million budget surplus. We've been able to modernize much of county government, improve the delivery of services, and each of the last 4 years we've cut the Dutchess County tax levy. We've done that all within the context of the ongoing pressures from Albany, uncertainty in Washington, and with a real focus on simply solving the problem and serving the voters. That's it. I've appointed Republicans and Democrats, and I don't even ask, because at the end of the day, I want good people at the table. If you're honest and earnest about solving a problem, I want you to be a part of it, and that's what we do in county government. So these last 2 years, I was traveling the state of New York thinking I was going to run for governor, and then as some of you know, I ended the year last year deciding I wouldn't run for governor. I thought that, in fact, it wasn't my time, that it was going to be too difficult, the challenge would be too great. So I went home, and something very strange happened. Chris Gibson called me, and a lot of other people called me and said, you ought to reconsider. I don't want to embarrass her. She didn't call me, but Chris McEwen is here from the Ark of Dutchess. I only tell you that because we have a wonderful program that I want to talk about tonight. If you ask me about what we should be doing for those with developmental disabilities, I'd like to tell you what we should be doing. I had families from across New York who had been a part of our effort. Now, over 100 communities across the state of New York have adopted Think Differently as a campaign. I had families calling me saying, we really would like you to reconsider. We thought that you would be the person to stand up for us. So I did what I did in 1995. I ran home and I said to my wife, I think I want to run for governor. And Corinne said, well, you're going to do what you want to do anyway, but you got to talk to the kids. So we prayed about it, and we did. And I talked to my kids. We have 3 wonderful children. I talked about Eli, my daughter Abigail, who I just adore, and my son Jack. Jack is now 9. He was 8 then. And I said to my kids, I said to Jack in particular, I said, Jack, your dad is being asked to run for governor again. And so Jack looked up at me and he said, well, how many times do they have to ask you? And then I said, Jack, and this is word for word, I said, Jack, it's not going to be easy. I'm going to have to be out a lot. The governor raised a lot of money. In fact, over nearly 8 years, he's raised something like $75 million. When he tell you something, you don't raise $75 million without bending the rules and rigging the system. And I mean that as honestly and sincerely, and we've seen it every day for the last several months. It's on trial. Individuals in this administration found guilty of federal corruption charges, and worse, and worse. And I said to Jack, he's going to use that money, and they're going to say some nasty things about your dad. Nearly every one of them will be untrue. I mean, he must have said one honest thing about me. And it's not going to be friendly. And then Jack, my 8-year-old son, looks up at me and says, Dad, you coach our soccer team. And I still do. By the way, when I was asked to run, I said, I have one rule. I need to be able to finish coaching my son's soccer league. So we had 4 more games before I could actually start campaigning. But some people have said, well, why weren't you out there? Because I was coaching my son's soccer team, and I made that commitment to this boy. Jack looks up at me and he says, Dad, you coach our soccer team, and I do feel badly for them, but I do. And there are sometimes we play some really tough teams. And we know that it's going to be tough. We don't think we're going to win. And you look at us and you tell us to go out on that field and play hard. And then my son looked up at me and said, don't you think you should take your own advice? How any dad could say no to that? Of course, Jack takes credit for me running. But it put it all in perspective for me. I have spent every day of my adult life, this is politically incorrect for anyone to say, so I'm going to say it. I have spent every day of my adult life trying to make government serve people. Every day. I have checked to the degree I can my ego. I've tried to make sure that people of all backgrounds have a seat at the table to solve problems. I've spent every day of my life trying to make government work for people. And I have seen over these last 7 years, when this governor came into office, I had the greatest amount of hope. I did. In fact, I said, sign me up. Let's reform New York. And then what we saw was this continued malaise, right? This new normal set in. And it is stealing from us. It is stealing from us. Over 7 years, we are now the highest taxed people in America. We shoulder the highest burden of taxation of any state in the country. At the same time, this state has led the nation in outmigration. What does that mean? We've lost more New Yorkers to other states than any state in America because we tax too much. We spend more than we can afford, and we borrow to make up the difference. We are the least friendly place to own and operate a business. We have the least freedom as it's measured of any state in the country, and we are the least friendly place to retire. If you can afford to leave as you get older, you choose to. The other, and equally as troubling, we lose more 18 to 40-year-olds to other states than any state in the country. So that means that while we graduate some great, great, talented young people, because of the burden, we don't have the job opportunities, and we don't have the ability for young people to survive here. So where do they go? They go to other states. And that is troubling, and it's embarrassing, and it needs to be addressed. At the same time, by any measurement, we have the most corrupted state government in the country, by any measure. And you know I'm running against somebody. I've never been at this end of a race. Usually I'm the hands-on favorite to win, so it's a little bit different for me, right? Except that one time I ran for the village board. So I just want to say this. I'm running against someone who has now had 6 or 7 of his closest associates, the top lieutenants in government, found guilty of federal corruption charges. That's not made up. That's real. Juries of their peers have found them guilty. And at the same time, what we've seen is the system is being rigged against average, ordinary New Yorkers. And unless you have the power, unless you have the resources, you're not listened to. We've seen it. We've seen it. And at the same time, we've seen that corruption steal from us. It's the reason why it costs so much to lay a sidewalk. It's the reason it costs so much to put down a mile of railroad track in New York City, 3 and 4 times more expensive in New York than any other place in the world. It's the reason why government doesn't often respond the way that you would expect it to, why it's not efficient and effective in the delivery of services, why it seems all the time that not only in Albany doesn't the left hand know what the right hand's doing, most of the time the left hand doesn't even know there is a right hand. And it's that corruption and that feeling that certain people are in power. This governor actually said a short while ago that he is the government. He said, "I am the government." Now listen, I could quote a lot of other things that are equally offensive, and even more so. Last week, I don't know what he was thinking or why he was thinking it, but I'd suggest he probably should stop talking the way he did. But nevertheless, "I am the government" is not a way that anybody in elected office should speak or think ever. I will tell you that in every conversation I've ever had, from the mayor to now county executive, I consider myself the least intelligent person in the conversation, the least important person in the conversation. Because at the end of the day, in order to solve the real problems that face us, we've got to bring people together, and we've got to get different ideas, different backgrounds, different opinions to work together. And that's my commitment. I'm running for governor because I could not look at my son and say his dad, who believes passionately about public service, was going to sit on the sidelines and let someone else continue to run this state government down and off the tracks. He's steering us toward an $18 billion budget deficit. We continue to see taxation and spending that is not sustainable. And then you ask, and many people will say, "I'm willing to pay if I get something in return." But our education system, our economic condition, all of it ranks middle, if not below, in this country. So we need to make the system and make government function and respond to people again and serve the people again. So I'm running for governor because I think it's time that we end the corruption. I'm committed to ending the pay for play. That means starting with term limits, 2 4-year terms for statewide office holders, and I commit myself to that. I said I will demand a vote of the state legislature on term limits, 2 4-year terms, 6 2-year terms, and then, by the way, if you want to vote no, go right ahead, but explain to the taxpayers why. And if you're not willing to do it for yourselves, then impose it on me. I'll lead by example. Hold me to 2 4-year terms, and that's it. End the pay to play. If you do business with the state of New York, you no longer can contribute to politicians because it's eroding the public's trust and it's influencing. At the same time, I do not think it's right for anybody to stand, any politician, elected official, to stand in front of you with a big plastic check. I say that respectful of those who think it is. I don't think it's right for government to take money out of hardworking taxpayers' pockets to give it to a select few in order to compensate for the fact that they took too much money out of hardworking taxpayers' pockets to begin with. So no more checks to businesses, no more checks to private interests, no more corporate welfare, because it is stealing from us and it is eroding this democracy and this government. End it all. End it all. Make New York more affordable again by cutting property taxes. This state forces more state spending down on... This state government forces more state spending onto local property taxes than any state in the country. So when the governor had the nerve 2 years ago to say, if you don't like your property taxes, blame them. That's nonsense. It's dishonest. The state forces more of its massive spending down onto a finite and acute small property tax base, which ends up costing us a fortune. It's why property taxes are as high as they are. My granddad used to say, don't tell me what you believe, show me your budget. So I say to Albany, if you think something's important, you pay for it. And if you're not willing to pay for it, you don't think it's all that important. So by driving down costs and driving down and improving efficiencies and making government function more affordably, we can cut costs. And by every dollar we cut should go back to you as property tax relief. Not in a check, not in somebody cutting a ribbon, in actual property tax relief. And I believe over 8 years we can produce substantial property tax relief for families across the state of New York, and we will do that together. And then lastly, make this government as effective as it can be to get out of the way of good businesses who are just trying to make ends meet. New York spends far too much time and money and advertises in other parts of the country telling them how wonderful it would be to move here. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we've got great businesses in New York. We've got great entrepreneurs in New York. We've got great innovators in New York. We should be supporting them to grow job opportunities here. And so we'll make the system easier for small businesses again, so we can grow jobs. 70% of new jobs come from existing businesses in a community. So that means the biggest bang for our smallest investment comes by supporting those local mom and pops, by dealing with the licensing that makes it more difficult, dealing with the regulation that makes it more difficult, to help small and medium-sized businesses grow to medium and large businesses, and taking advantage of the fact that upstate New York, this is, I almost have the statistic right, but I'll bend it just a little. Upstate New York has the highest per capita number of college students of any place in the country. We should be using that talent, that innovation, that passion, and that drive to help grow and advance jobs and businesses in the state of New York, and we can do that together. So that's enough of me talking, although you're going to ask questions and I'm going to answer, which will continue me talking, which is useful, I guess, to a degree. But what I'd like to do is spend some time answering your questions. So, hold on. I got you. Don't worry. He's very energized. I can sense it. What we're going to do tonight is I need you to play by a couple rules, if you don't mind. I will absolutely call on you. So if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. If you could do one thing for me, I'd like to know your first name.